Hey, 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 everybody. How's everyone going? So we're back at it again. We got Tyler and Marshall in the chat. Howdy, fellas. We are chapter 31. Also, a little bit of news, I should say.
Hey, 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 everybody.
Whoops. Gotta turn that down. Little feedback there. Some news. Next week, I'm gonna be away on vacation, so I'm thinking I'm not gonna be able to do a chapter. Probably might be able to squeeze in some kind of Q&A live stream. Maybe that's what's gonna happen. Anyway, for everyone here, welcome. For everyone in the future, howdy. Please like and subscribe. And if you want to support these efforts, you can become a YouTube member or subscribe to the Ko-fi account. There's also PayPal for one-time donations. So, once again, for those people joining in, you want to use the same PDF as me? Guess what we got? I got it from this site, gurdjieff.thework. Down at the bottom, there's the library, primary text. You can find the PDF I'm using right there. So, what else was there to say? I swear I was going to say something else. No. Anyway, guess we'll just get in it. We'll just get on with it. Sorry, I should say. So, chapter 31, the sixth and last sojourn of Beelzebub on the planet Earth. Now, when after the two Onacres, which are we getting a? Okay, on the PDF, there's the footnotes on at the bottom of the page, unfortunately, but I'm pretty sure that's a month. About a month in standard Hume times. So after about 2 months, the cosmic intersystem ship Karnak. So remember, we just finished off that giant chapter on art, and it finished with a little. All the buzzers went off in their ship, and everyone started moving around. So the ship Karnak had left the spheres of the atmosphere of the planet Revosvradendir. Okay, there we go. Jesus Christ. Remember everybody. If I fail to pronounce the word, take a shot. I gotta say, if we remember at the very start of this book, they were flying through space and they were talking about the spaceship and how it was built. And then they basically said there's like a huge gas cloud, which they can't get through. And so they were just going to wait for it to pass, remember, or something like that. And so 31 chapters later, the ships finally started again. Remember when that happened? Was that like chapter 16? They were like, oh, there's a gas cloud. Let's just stop and like talk about stuff. So every single chapter since they stopped the ship is just one huge diversion from the main storyline of the main events going on. A story and a story and a story and a story. Now, and it began to fall back in the direction of the solar system Pandet Znok. That's pretty good. I think I got that right. Pandet Znok. It's the like z right in the middle there that makes that a bit hard to pronounce. Pandet Znok. Onto the planet Kratos. Hassian, having sat down in his usual place, addressed Beelzebub with the following words. Hassian's been getting some lines in the last couple of chapters, I noticed. My dear and beloved grandfather, be kind as always and tell me something more about the three-scented beings breeding on that planet Earth, a planet which is called Earth. Yep, they be breeding, all right. In reply to this, Beelzebub related about his sixth and last visit on the planet Earth. So this is the last time. We're not going to get a secret seventh one right at the end. He begun thus. I was on that planet for the sixth time, just before I received my full pardon and permission to leave that most remote solar system situated even almost beyond the reach of the immediate emanations of the omni-most holy sun absolute. That is, just before my return here to the center of the universe, to the place of my arising, to the immediate bosom of our common uni-being endlessness. So, he's finally getting to go back to his home. to the place of his arising. Now, after his final sojourn. This time, circumstances unexpectedly so came about that I had to exist there among these peculiar beings of a fairly long time, namely a little less than a year of our time, or by the time calculation there, more than 300 years. So, one of their years is more than 300 years for us. That's like 2 grandmas back to back. No, that's like 3 grandmas back to back. Oh, damn. Like 300-year-old grandmas is just 1 year. That's 3 generations. After 3 of our generations, one of their years passes. Good God. Imagine what you could do with that time. As initial cause of this vast visit of mine to the surface of that planet, which has pleased you, the following circumstances served. You must know that after my 5th visit to the surface of that planet of yours, I continued likewise as before to observe from time to time the existence of those 3-brained beings who please you. I observed them particularly attentively at those periods when there proceeded among them their chief particularity, namely their processes of reciprocal destruction. So he was really interested in the wars. Like all good boys, he just wanted to know more about Roman formations and whatnot. And I observed so attentively at these periods because I wished to make unquestionably clear to myself the causes of the periodic manifestations of such an exceptionally terrible need of their strange psyche. Strange to the point of the phenomenal. So it is phenomenally strange that we do war. War. When I happened to be a little freer, I would at times follow, for almost a whole Martian day or night, every kind of their manifestations during these processes. Well then, thanks to these special observations of mine, both from the planet Mars, and during my formal personal sojourns there among them, I had a more or less definite understanding concerning all the ways and means used by them for a more effective destruction of each other's existence. Well, my boy, once while watching, as usual, this process of theirs from the planet Mars through my big Tescuano, yeah, I bet it's big, I suddenly noticed that which served as the initial cause impelling me to undertake my 6th descent. Namely, I saw this time that, without moving from their place, they did with a certain thing something which resulted in a tiny puff of smoke, whereupon a being from the opposite side immediately fell down, either totally destroyed or with one or other part of his planetary body mutilated or destroyed forever. So, we got the invention of gunpowder high military tech. The creation of the military-industrial complex afforded the 6th sojourn of Beelzebub to the planet Earth. For 300 years, no less. Such a means of reciprocal destruction I had never seen before, and there had not yet been crystallized in my presence any data for a confrontative logical explanation of the possibility on their part of using such a means for destroying the existence of other beings similar to themselves. I wonder what Beelzebub thinks about nukes. Yeah. Concerning each and every of their ways and means, the purpose of which was the destruction of each other's existence. I had already had before this a definite logical confrontation which explained to me just what are the accidentally arisen surrounding factors that bring forth in them impulses and stimuli, as the result of which their essence is gradually brought to such a phenomenal being ableness to destroy for no rhyme or reason the existence of other beings similar to themselves. Thank you for that paragraph, Gurdjieff. But for this new means, which I now saw for the first time for destroying each other's existence, my former logical and psychological explanations could not indeed in any way be applied. So he couldn't even comprehend what was happening. It's like when we see alien tech, we're like, what is this? And he's looking at us being like, it's a flip. It's a complete opposite. It's the aliens are looking at us going like, what the hell? What is Instagram anyway? I had formally explained myself that such an exclusively abnormal inherency in their psyche is not self-acquired by beings of the given epoch. Dylan in the chat. But I understood that this terrifying periodic being need, we have a being, our entire being needs this, was acquired and gradually assimilated by them during the course of very many of their centuries. Also, of course, thanks to the abnormal conditions of existence established by the beings of past generations. And that this being need had already become finally inherent in the contemporary three-brained beings owing to external circumstances, not depending upon them, and that it had become inevitably proper to them to occupy themselves with this. And indeed, my boy, during these processes, they usually instinctively at first refrain from such an unnatural manifestation. But later, when every one of them already in the environment of the process itself willy-nilly sees and becomes convinced that the destruction of the existence of those similar to themselves proceeds so simply, and that the number of the destroyed always grows and grows, well, then each of them involuntarily begins instinctively to feel and automatically to value his own existence. So actually, we don't seem to like war, and at the first sign of war, we feel kind of disgusted. But there comes a point, maybe a proximity of which, that it just becomes like, oh no, it becomes a natural being need that we then like, no, it's time to take some guys down. And having become persuaded by his own eyes that the possibility of losing his own existence depends, at the given moment, absolutely only on the number of beings of the enemy side not destroyed, then in consequence of the strengthened functioning in his imagination of the presence of the impulse called cowardice, and on account of the impossibility at each moment of reasonable deliberation by his being mentation, weakened already without this. So he's slamming the cowardice on us. He begins from a natural feeling of self-preservation to strive with all his being to destroy as many possible of the existences of the beings of the enemy side in order to have the greater chance of surviving his own existence. So it's like the instinctual need for preservation combined with cowardice. And like, what does he say about the function here? And the idea of the number of enemies that have not been destroyed that are present in his imagination, create this being impulse called cowardice. So that's an interesting thing. So he just basically has this. There's an instinctual urge, there's cowardice, and those mixed together just it's like that. That's what gets you foolhardy. That's what gets you like the end scene of the movie Platoon. Like you just gotta take them out, get in the zone, boys. And gradually, progressing in this feeling of self-preservation of theirs, they then reach the state, as they themselves say, of bestiality. You gotta go renegade, Charlie Sheen. Let's do this. But as regards that means of the destruction of the existence of other beings similar to themselves, I think, as Marshall says, I think Gurdjieff is saying that humans clamor for war due to their love of conflicts, but when war actually happens, we become cowards and value our own. Yeah, that's a very possible interpretation. Yeah, definitely. But as regards that means of the destruction of the existence of other beings similar to themselves, which I then saw, it was now impossible to apply it, this logical confrontation at which I had just arrived, simply because I then clearly saw that the enemy side stood fairly apart, that all warring beings were among their own, and that in these semi-favorable conditions they quietly and absolutely cold-bloodedly, out of boredom as it were, did something with the help of a something and thereby destroyed the existence of other beings similar to themselves. So this is interesting. Let me just close this window here. I think, so this is something that Evola mentions in Metaphysics of War. He says people don't actually go to war anymore. We use machines for doing war for us. So this is interesting. It's like he's pointing this out, like the Beelzebub is intrigued. It's like they're not doing anything. They're just completely cold-blooded. Out of a sense of boredom, they're doing something and destroying something else over there. It's like you don't even engage in war. You have machines do it for you. It's even worse now. We have like people just working drones and just going into the field and like being kind of there, but being extracted from it. It's no longer, they're no longer smelling, and they don't even like smell the death anymore. It's like another abstraction, another simulacrum. So he's pointing out something very interesting there. Well, this same new means of theirs for the destruction of each other's existence just strengthened in my essence the need to make indubitably clear and to understand all the genuine causes of this phenomenally strange psyche which had become proper to the presences exclusively of those peculiar three-brained beings. As I had nothing particular to do this time on the planet Mars, I decided to wind up, without delay, my current affairs and personally to descend to your planet, and there on the spot, at any cost, to elucidate this question which had always troubled me, in order that, having solved it, I might no longer think about these phenomena of our great universe. So he's just like, he almost has a deep fascination with us, and he's like, if I leave now, I'm just going to be thinking about this forever. So he needs to understand it. Several Martian days later, I just flew there, as always, on the same ship occasion. We decided to descend this time into the continent Asia, near the locality called Afghanistan. Since before we had flown off, we had made it clear through our test guano that the turn of the process of reciprocal destruction was proceeding at that time in just the said country. Interesting. In how very eternal return that it all starts in Afghanistan. But okay, so he's heading towards Afghanistan. Having descended onto the locality near this Afghanistan, we decided to send our ship occasion for mooring somewhere further from these places, those places where your favorites had recently been breeding. You must know that to find a suitable mooring place for our ship occasion on the surface of your planet has already in recent times become anything but easy. Since your favorites have furnished themselves with very many kinds of contrivances for what is called marine locomotion, which contrivances they also call ships, and these ships of theirs are constantly flitting about in all directions, mostly around the continents. We had, it is true, the possibility of making our ship occasion invisible to their organs of perception of visibility, but we could not annihilate its presence. Without this, it could not remain stationary on the water because of the constant danger of their ships might bump into it. This is interesting as well. Aliens, so Gurdjieff predicted the alien thing and water. So as people mention, usually call UFOs unidentified flying objects, but they don't call them that anymore. They call them UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena. Because it's like aliens don't just fly, they also go through the water. That's one of the main things. Like, when you hear stuff about the, from the Air Force disclosure of like the stories, just a pilot flying around and then all of a sudden the radar, just something zooms in, a blip, and then it just like does something impossible, turns at an angle that shouldn't be physically possible, and then descends into the ocean, and they're like, Mayday, what the hell was that? And they're just like, we have no idea, don't tell anyone about that. It's like there's this weird thing that aliens have with water. They always descend into the water. So Beelzebub has this thing, it's like, oh yeah, to properly descend to a planet, you don't land on the Earth, you land on the ocean. You use the ocean, or you use a body of water to land. But it's interesting, the existence of boats kind of basically puts a dent in that. So he can turn his ship invisible, but he can't have him like, but he can't kind of be in a place where a lot of boats are. Another guy is in the chat. Howdy guy. Well, for this reason, we this time decided to send our ship for mooring to what is called the North Pole. Confirmed, Beelzebub is Santa Claus, where their ships have as yet no possibility of going. While we descended there, while we were descending onto the surface of this planet of yours, The process of reciprocal destruction which had been proceeding in Afghanistan finished, but all the same I remained to exist near this Afghanistan as it was just on that part of the continent Asia, that at that period these processes of theirs most frequently proceeded. Since I had in view on this last personal flight of mine onto the surface of your planet to obtain without fail a completed awareness of the causes of the questions which were constantly troubling my essence, namely to make clear to myself the causes in all their aspects, why the psyche of those three-brained beings who please you has become such an anomaly, I did not, as I have already told you, soon return home to the planet Mars as I did on previous occasions, but I remained to exist among your favorites about 300 of their years. So in this sojourn particularly, he stayed for a long time. As I now commence the narration of the information elucidating the state of the results already obtained from every cause in the common presences of the three-brained beings of the planet Earth, which pleases you, my essence prompts me and animates my eye, and all the separately spiritualized parts of my common presence to emphasize first of all that during this last personal sojourn of mine on the surface of your planet I had to study very seriously and even to elucidate experimentally the details not only of the psyche of single individuals of your favorites taken separately, but likewise the perceptions and manifestations of the psyche of these single individuals taken in a general mass, dependently upon the combinations of surrounding conditions and the results brought forth by them, and also upon their mutual reactions. So Gurdjieff not only anticipates psychology, but sociology. For the purpose of these elucidating experiments of mine, I was even obliged this time to have recourse to the help of those branches of general knowledge which we call Samon Olturico, Gasometronoltorico, and Sakukinoltorico. Hey, okay. That is to say those branches, that is to those branches the similarities to which are found among your favorites. Also, these specialities being named medicine, physiology, hypnotism. Okay, jeez. Jesus. It's interesting he doesn't say psychology, he specifically says hypnotism. So medicine, physiology, hypnotism. One day I'll study, I would love to study linguistics and just like break down how Gurdjieff constructed this language he has. This is a really interesting thing. Tyler says, gotta know your Noltoricos. Yeah, I know, right? So that seems to be the end word, Noltorico. Gasometrol Norico, Sama Noltorico, Sakukinotorico. Yeah, there we go. Got him. High Desert in the chat says, hi Desert. Just at the beginning of this sixth personal sojourn of mine, I soon categorically made clear, thanks to my experimental investigations, that most of the causes of the strangeness of their psyche are found not in that usual consciousness of theirs, in which alone they have already automatized themselves to exist in what is called their waking state. So we have part of our consciousness, and we call it our waking state, and it's automatized. So our waking state consciousness is limited, but it's also separate from a completely different consciousness within us. But that consciousness of theirs, which thanks to their abnormal ordinary being existence, was gradually driven within their common presence, and which, although it should have been their real consciousness, yet remains in them in its primitive state and is called their subconsciousness. So part of Gurdjieff's work is expanding our automized normal daily waking consciousness, but also reconciling it with the true consciousness that is subterranean and hidden within us. Andresel Chico in the chat says, I'm drunk. Any tips to get my life in order? Stop drinking. Or drink something different? This subconsciousness is, however, just that, part of their general psyche about which, do you remember? I think I remember. I have told you already that it was first noticed by the very saintly Ashiata Shayamash, who constated that in that part of their psyche there are not yet atrophied the data for the fourth sacred impulse, which is named objective conscience. So basically, yeah, remember this. Gurdjieff makes this separation. We have these these being impulses within us. Love, hope, and faith, but they have been warped within our consciousness because of the Kunda buffer. However, there was one being impulse that wasn't warped because it survived by submerging itself in our subconsciousness, and that is our conscience. And so a part of bringing the subconscious, our true consciousness, to the forefront is to become conscious of the conscience within us, that little voice within us that guides us. And so that's kind of a first part of the work. So we expand our automized consciousness. So we want it to be less mechanical. We want to expand it. And a part of that expansion should be this recovery of the conscience, that silent voice, that intuition that guides us. So when I had chosen as the place of my fundamental existence the locality in the center of the continent Asia called Turkestan. So after traveling from the North Pole, he made a home in Turkestan for 300 years maybe. I not only went from there to places where the processes which interested me proceeded, but during the pauses or lulls in these processes, I also traveled a great deal, visiting almost all the continents, and during these travels I encountered beings of most, as they say, peoples. During these travels of mine, I remained nowhere for long, excepting in certain independent countries on the continent Asia, called China, India, Tibet, and of course also that lately largest half Asiatic, half European community called Russia. So China, India, Tibet. Interesting. This is really interesting. This makes me wonder, Beelzebub has come down from the heavens and has traveled around. He's been around the planet, and it makes me wonder, this China, India, Tibet thing, and then he ends up in Russia. That's the journey that Gurdjieff himself allegedly takes in real life as well, He's born in Russia, but then he kind of travels around Greek Armenia, goes to Egypt, goes to India, China, Tibet, and then he goes back to Russia and, meets Ouspensky and starts giving public teachings. It kind of makes me wonder if the Beelzebub, because I've heard some people say like Hassian is Gurdjieff's self-insert in this story. Like Hassian is Gurdjieff and Beelzebub is like his higher centers or something. I'm like, I don't know, maybe. But it kind of feels like Beelzebub himself is Gurdjieff, and Gurdjieff is kind of like telling us his past lives, or not telling us his past lives, but he's pulling memories out of his subconsciousness, out of his eternal memory, because he was an initiate, and he's basically like embedded the knowledge from his past lives into a narrative, and like little clues like this he's left there to kind of show us like, oh yeah, this is actually, even though this is a narrative and it's not true, it's also completely true in a way. There's something interesting about that. Anyway, in the beginning, I devoted all the time I had free from observations and investigations concerning the chief aim, which I had set myself for this time, to the study of languages there. In order to, and once again, Gurdjieff studied languages. He knew a bunch of different languages. In order to have greater possibilities of better establishing everywhere corresponding relations with the beings of all types, belonging to every kind of their peoples there. Maybe, my boy, you do not yet know that it is also on this ill-fated planet only that there exists the excessive absurdity which consists in this, that therefore mutual spoken relations among themselves, again, thanks to the abnormal external conditions of their ordinary existence, there are as many diverse languages or dialects that have nothing in common with each other, as there are separate independent groups into which they have gradually become split. Whereas on all other planets of our great universe, where three-brained beings breed, there is everywhere one common, what is called sound-manifesting mutual intercourse. So on other planets, they just have one language. Whereas here, we've messed things up. Yes, and this polyglottism, so plurality of languages, is also one of the characteristics and exclusive particularities of these strange three-brained beings who please you. And therefore every scrap of terra firma, or even for each insignificant independent group accidentally separated from each other upon such a scrap, there was formed by these strange beings, and there still continues to be formed, for spoken relations a quite separate speech. Yeah, even in the same country, just you can go from one town to another and kind of not understand the speech because there's like a different local dialect. I mean, even intergenerationally, you have like sussy Rizzlers, and you're like, what the fuck? What is he even talking about? It's like, things change, bruh. Thanks to this, it now happens that on the planet Earth, that if one of the inhabitants of any locality of this planet by chance finds himself in another place of the same planet, he has no possibility whatever of intercourse with the beings there similar to himself, unless he learns their language. Even I, who had then learned perfectly 18 of their different languages, found myself during my travels under conditions at different times where I had not even the possibility of getting fodder for my horse, in spite of the fact that my pockets were full of what is called their money, for which in general they will give you with the greatest joy there anything you please. It may happen there that if one of those unfortunate beings existing in some town or other, knowing all the languages used in that town, finds it for some reason or other necessary on another occasion to be in some other place at a distance of 50 or so of what are called their miles, which distance corresponds approximately to one of our clintrana. It's another interesting name for a measurement, clintrana. Then this ill-fated three-brained being happening to be even at this insignificant distance from the place of his somehow or other established existence, owing to the abnormality there referred to, and also, of course, because in the common presences of these unfortunate beings, the data in general for instinctive perception were long ago atrophied, becomes absolutely helpless and can neither ask for what he really needs nor understand a word of what is being said to him. Oh yeah. These numerous languages of theirs not only have nothing in common with each other, but one of them will sometimes be so built up that it has absolutely no correspondence with the possibilities of those organs of the common presences of the beings which are specially adapted by nature for this purpose, and which are called vocal cords. And even I, who have a much greater possibility in this respect, was entirely unable to utter certain words. So even Beelzebub struggled with some of our languages and dialects. He was just like, what the? They got clicks in their name? What the hell? The beings of the planet Earth themselves, however, realized this absurdity of theirs, and recently, while I was still there, a number of representatives of their different solid communities met somewhere together jointly to find a means for a way out of this difficulty. The fundamental purpose of these representatives of the contemporary important communities who assembled together was to select one of the languages already existing there and to make it common for the whole planet. However, as usual, nothing resulted, either from this really sensible intention of theirs, owing, as he calls it a sensible intention, which is funny, of theirs owing, as ever, of course, to those same usual dissensions of theirs, thanks to which all their promising beginnings always fall through. In my opinion, you will find it useful if I tell you a little more in detail why, please do tell us in detail, why, in the given case, these said dissensions of theirs occurred, as this will be a very characteristic example of the dissensions in general arising among them. At the outset, these said representatives of the contemporary solid communities, why I don't know, fixed their choice of a common planetary language on one of the three following languages existing at present, called Ancient Greek, Latin, and the language newly composed by the contemporary beings, Esperanto, the ultimate failure of a language. But it's okay. I speak Esperanto like a native. The first of the said three languages was the one which was worked up and which served for the spoken relations of the beings of that ancient community there, which, as I have already told you, arose from a small group of Asiatic fishermen, and which group later became a solid community, the beings of which were during a long period specialists there in the invention of sciences. From the beginning of this community, that is, from the said ancient Greeks, not only many different sciences, but likewise their language reached contemporary beings. But the second language which they proposed to make a common planetary language, namely Latin, was the language spoken by the beings of that ancient solid community, formed, as I have also told you, from a small group of Asiatic shepherds, whose descendants were later the cause of the fact that in the presences of all the beings there of subsequent generations, there was gradually formed and ultimately, in the contemporary beings, became already definitely fixed and obligatorily inherent in them, that perverted function, thanks to which all impulses arise in them, in the sense of striving for evolution, are already automatically paralyzed at their very roots, which they themselves call sexuality. Hold up. Hold up. This is interesting. So he said something here. So he says, that perverted function, thanks to which all impulses arising in them, in the sense of striving for evolution, are already automatically paralyzed at their very roots, which they call sexuality. So sexuality is paralyzed at our root. Meaning what? If it wasn't paralyzed, what would it do? Striving for evolution. So this is another kind of tip. So once again, there's this weird sexual transmutation theme that goes through Gurdjieff's works. You mentioned it before with the Exohari. I'm waiting for that again. It's all because this all comes to a type of immortality. Not an immortality of our physical planetary body, but of creating a higher being body that then we're able to crystallize and maintain, have a solid center, which then actually reincarnates. And so there's the creation of the higher body, to create a body physically. You use your sexual energy and you spill it outwards, and it creates a body. But if you transmute it inwards and upwards, our sexuality, if it's not paralyzed, and we can have it strive for us internally within ourselves, it can create a higher being body. But what order, how do we do this in what order? Like, do we need the conscience first? We need to expand our consciousness first? There's something very interesting here. So Gurdjieff is becoming Reichian, sexuality is paralyzed. Perhaps this is a reference to character Amor, possibly. Yeah, very, well, I mean, Reich hit some very esoteric roots there. Because Gurdjieff is, I don't think Gurdjieff had access to Reich at this point in time, but Gurdjieff definitely read Freud, and Reich comes out of Freud, right out of Freud. So they are both Reich and Gurdjieff are touching at this root. So it's very interesting. I'm always intrigued when he says something like that. That's a little drop, and he just in this whole description, this side tangent about language, he just drops that in there. He's always doing those little things. Now let's keep moving forwards. When these representatives of various contemporary powerful communities met in order collectively to choose one or another of the mentioned three languages, they could not settle upon any one of the three languages owing to the following considerations. Latin they found poor in the sense of the number of words, so it wasn't as expressive as other languages. And indeed, my boy, the shepherds with their limited needs could not create a many-worded language, and although Latin became later on the language of a large community, yet beyond the special words required for orgies, they did not introduce into it anything that could suit the contemporary beings of your planet. That's funny. And as regards the Greek language, then although by the wealth of its vocabulary, it might indeed serve as a universal language for their whole planet, because these former fishermen, in inventing every possible kind of fantastic science, happened also to devise very many corresponding words which remained in that language, yet these representatives of the contemporary powerful communities could not fix their choice upon it owing to a peculiar particularity which also flows from this strange psyche of theirs. So what they were arguing about definitions. So there was a plurality of words, it was more expressive, but then they argued about definitions. The point is that the beings assembled to select a common planetary language were representatives of communities which had become, at that period of their contemporary civilization, powerful, or as they also say, great. But this ancient Greek language continues at the present time to be spoken by the beings of a contemporary small society, a small community called Greece. Who through... Sorry, what's the chat saying? I want to know those words. The orgy words. Yeah, of course you do, Tyler. Former fishermen, the apostles of Christ. I don't know. That's interesting. I think it's more because in the previous chapters he just like completely slammed and made fun of Greece and Italy. And, you know, what are the Italians proud of? They're proud of being warriors, but he's just saying they're shepherds. And then with the Greeks, you know, they're proud of their huge empires. But really, there was never a Greek empire. There was an Athenian empire. And what was that? It was mainly a naval empire. So he's saying, oh, it wasn't a huge naval empire. They were just a bunch of fishermen, you know. Like, it might just be a side slap. Just, he's given them he's backhanding them a little bit. Anyway, called Greeks, who, they are descendants of the former great Greeks, have not now at their disposal as many of what are called guns and ships as those important communities whose representatives were just then assembled in order unanimously to select one common language for the whole planet. Therefore, in all probability, each of these representatives deliberated somewhat as follows. Heavens above, can anybody use a language which is spoken by the beings of such a trifling community? It hasn't even guns to entitle its representatives to equal participation in our international 5 o'clocks. So I gave that sentence a British accent for no particular reason. And indeed, such contemporary beings there, namely such as become representatives of important communities, know nothing, of course, of the true reasons why. That is, on their planet, beings similar to them, dwelling on one or another part of the surface of their planet, or who make up this or the other community, become at times temporarily important or great. Lamau. They do not even begin to suspect that this proceeds not because of any particular qualities in the beings themselves of the given communities, but depends exclusively only from what part of the surface of their planet, in correlation with the harmonious movement of the whole of their solar system, there is required at the given period for the purposes of the most great omni-universal trogo-auto-egocratic process, more of those vibrations arising either from their radiations or from the process of the sacred Rascuano proceeding from them. Okay, so basically countries become great not because they have a great population, but because there's just like energy built up in the atmosphere in irregular places on different continents, and so the pole of a planet shifts. It's interesting. I wonder what Gurdjieff would think of Dugan. 3 times great indeed. Nice catch, Dylan. Thrice great, if you would so. Now, and in regard to the third language, which these assembled representatives also proposed making the common planetary language, namely that language which they call Esperanto, over it there did not indeed then arise among them even their usual squabbles, which they characterized with the words foaming at the mouth. They themselves, with all the bobbin-tailedness of their reason, immediately reflected this language could not now in any way be useful for their purpose. The inventors of this language must have imagined that a language is like one of their contemporary sciences, which can be cooked up at home in one study. Indeed, it never entered into their heads that every more or less practical language can be formed only in the process of many centuries, and even then, only during the process of more or less normal being existence. I think we should just make the universal language Klingon. No, Elvish. It should be Elvish. We should all just get Lord of the Rings. We should all just Lord of the Rings max and start learning Elvish. This new invention there, this language Esperanto, might, however, do for our highly esteemed Mullah Nasser Eddin for composing the amusing anecdotes he tells his hens. In short, this promising beginning of theirs, in this business of establishing one common planetary language, changed nothing there in their height of absurdity. And everything remained as before down till now, that is, this comparatively petty planet, with a petty half-dead terra firma, continues to remain as, again, our dear teacher Mullah Nasser Eddin says, a thousand-tongued hydra. Yep, sounds correct. Tyler says, do I have to grow a neck beard, lol? No. Well, my boy, that's our reset cue. When I commenced my investigations in regard this time to the fundamental aim I had set myself in order to become assuredly aware of all the causes which produced such a peculiar psyche in the presences of the three-brained beings of the planet pleasing to you, and when therefore it soon became necessary for me to make clear certain of what are called hidden details in the common presence of this psyche of theirs, there unexpectedly arose for me, just at the beginning of this last personal stay of mine among them, a very serious difficulty consisting in this, that the bringing to light of these properties hidden within them, namely the properties found in their subconsciousness, yes, please tell us how to do this, turned out to be possible exclusively only with the intentional help on the part of themselves. Oh, that's good. Oh, I need that one. So this is interesting. So nothing outside of us can make us achieve enlightenment. You kind of get what I mean? There's this whole thing, this meme in the New Age where it's just like, oh my god, you need to see this master or this guru. They can do Shaktipat and give you Kundalini, or he can just put his hands on you and make you supremely enlightened, and your butthole will open up and light will descend into your eyes. And it's like, no. No. There's nothing you can do external to yourself that triggers enlightenment. You have to intend and use your will within to change the internal, or what you call it, qualities within yourself that then, that which is in your subconscious can then arise and integrate properly. Perhaps something can, like hypnosis, can stir up the subconsciousness, but it will only ever be a temporary effect. It's never going to be permanent. That's why, if you go, I don't know, down to Portland or something, I don't know where all the hippies congregate nowadays, but if you walk down like one of those streets that just has like a bunch of yoga studios and you look in, what do you see? You see people doing like weird workshops and stuff, and they got crystals on their heads or up their ass, and they're all like crying because they're healing childhood trauma or past life trauma or some crap. And that's neither here nor there, but the problem is you walk by the next day and it's the same people doing the same thing. And then you walk by the next week, same people. Next month, same people. 2 years, same people still crying with a crystal up their butt. And it's like, I get you need to heal your trauma, bro, but you've been doing the same thing for 2 years. You're not actually moving past anything. And that seems to be a lot of the fluff nowadays, is people in the spiritual community can't actually do the actual work. And so they kind of have this fluff, which just, I don't know, it just kind of processes around their consciousness, shifts certain things and qualities that have been crystallized around. And that kind of creates a temporary change that makes life more livable or enriches meaning. And, it's good for them and whatever, but no. We want real change. We want real initiation. We want immortality. Now, possible exclusively only with the intentional help on the part of themselves. That is, with the help of that consciousness of theirs, which with the flow of time had become proper to be possessed by them during their waking state. Furthermore, I made it clear to myself, and Pardon me. And so you can't like subvert someone into accidentally awakening. Furthermore, I made clear to myself that it was necessary that this said voluntary help should come from the three-brained beings there, of all the types of which in general, during recent times, they had begun to be completely formed. Marshall says, those who seek enlightenment outside of themselves become like Simon Magus. Exactly. The magician who tried to pay the apostles money to learn how to perform miracles like raising the dead or exorcism. Exactly. Yes, yes. But meanwhile, by this time, as it proved, there had already been almost atrophied in them every kind of data for the arising in their presences of the being impulse called sincerity. So sincerity is close to truth because it's something that's real. It's not masked by anything. Sincerity is pure in the sense, not as in a moral sense, but in a if you have an ore that's one metal, it's pure metal. It means there's nothing else mixed in it. And it was atrophied to such a degree that they no longer had the possibility, even if they wished, to be sincere, and not only with other beings, but even with their own selves, and that's the problem. As Ouspensky says, he calls it self-lying. It's not lying to others is a problem, but the lying that we do to ourselves is even more problematic because it prevents us from doing the work properly. That is, they already could not, with one of their spiritualized parts, criticize and judge another part of themselves impartially. That's what true self-observation is impartial judgment. It must be said here that my subsequent special researches... Maybe I'll leave later. I won't place a comment on that. Tyler says self-deception. Exactly. But it's self-deception also in a way that you don't even realize. It's just like when most people self-observe, I find their problem is they become too analytical and they love to label things. Oh, it's just my pride. You see Christians like that. It's my, like fanatical Christians, my spiritual pride or my spiritual vanity. And it's like, bro, that may not even be the issue. You're just slapping a label on it. Or it's my anger, or it's my gluttony. I remember talking to one guy, and he said gluttony was a big problem for him. Like, why does he do it? And then he actually said something profound once. He said he was like meditating, and he was really kind of just observing gluttony in all of these situations, like kind of retrospecting. I shouldn't say meditating, but he was kind of retrospecting and just thinking about all these little kind of times that he's gluttonous. And it's like he spontaneously kind of had a little vision, and the vision was of a small child just saying, I'm lonely. And it was like that was at the core of his gluttony. And it's like, oh, it's not gluttony, it's loneliness. There's something in us that's like the seed, that's the foundation, and then that grows and expresses. And the expression of it is a specific act that then gets labeled. This person is an angry person, this person is a lustful person, this person is an envious person. But what's the thing behind that? Too many people self-observe and just go, oh yeah, I self-observed. I know I'm angry, or I know I'm depressed, or I know I'm... It's like, no, you're just slapping a label on it. It's similar to, just ultra-random tangent here, parapsychology when they did, in parapsychological laboratories, whenever they do experiments for telepathy, and they'll get one person to visualize something and try and send it to another person, and that person would then receive an image. People who are too analytical always got it wrong. 100% of the time, they would be like, if someone said, I think I'm seeing a banana, it's just, you can just tell it's going to be wrong. But so he basically said the technique in parapsychological observatories, when they get people to try and do telepathic experiments, is they say, stick with what they call it, primitive perceptions. So it's like, just whatever comes to mind. Oh, maybe I'm seeing yellow. Maybe I'm feeling something smooth. I'm feeling also something a little bit textured. And that thing is brown. It's no longer yellow. I'm tasting something on my mouth. And when then afterwards, after you come out of this relaxed state, you then look at your data, and then you can analytically organize and be like, oh, that kind of looks like a banana. And then you look at the picture of what was trying to be sent to the receiver, and it's like, oh, it's a banana. I feel like there's something in there that needs to be applied for when we look at ourselves Too many people just want to look at you just want to look at yourself and just slap a label on it. But it's like, no, just look. Don't label. Don't go anger. Don't go this. Don't go that. Just look. Just look at what's happening. Just feel what's happening in your body. Just stick with primitive perceptions. Just feel the energy. Feel where it is in the body. And it's like after long hours of impartial judgment, of just impartial experiencing, all of those perceptions, all of that data should create an image of what's actually there. To just look at yourself, self-observe, or retrospect and be like, oh yeah, I yelled at this lady at the DMV. Oh, I guess I'm angry. I guess I'm impatient. It leads, being too analytical about our psychology actually leads to error, I find. Anyway, that's just my little reflection on that little line there. So it must be said here that my subsequent special research revealed to me that the cause of the atrophy of the data which should be in them, also for the possibility of being sincere with themselves, had one basis, while the cause of atrophying, or the possibilities of being sincere with others had another. Okay. So we are insincere with ourselves, but also insincere with others, and there may be different reasons for this. Marshall says, interesting. The more analytical, the worse. We must destroy the intellectual neurotic. Exactly. Well, we need to, like, balance out the thing. The intellect, the analytical. That little voice in us that says, inconceivable. You need to balance him with, like, the angry guy who wants to revenge his father. The basis for the atrophying of the first of the mentioned data is derived from the fact of the disturbance of the coordination of their common psyche. The point is that, then, at the beginning of this sixth existence of mine, among them, on the one hand, in their general presences, data yet continued always to be crystallized for the arising in them, as in all the three-brained beings in general, of the being impulse called self-remorse, and which they themselves called remorse of conscience. Very interesting. So, feeling, once again, not shame, not guilt. Shame and guilt just kill willpower, but there's something else called remorse. In Greek, metanoia, which literally just means to turn around. But psychologically, it can be to turn around and, change your way of acting. So that thing that was, you feel remorseful, you literally never do it again. So if you feel bad about something, but then you do it again, it wasn't real remorse. True remorse of conscience. If you really feel that in the depths of your soul, it actually transforms you and you become a being that doesn't do that thing. While on the other hand, every kind of their inner and outer manifestations in the ordinary process of their being existence began to become always less and less becoming to three-brained beings. Ooh, Jesus. While on the other hand, every kind of their inner outer manifestations in the ordinary process of their being existence began to become always less and less becoming to three. Oh, okay. As in unbecoming. Yeah, okay, I get it. That was just a really weird wording there. Consequently, in their presences, there arise more and more frequently the causes for the manifestation of the said being impulse of remorse of conscience, and as the sensations thereby induced, which are similar to those which arise from being park dog duty, infallibly lead to the suppression and the enslaving of the denying principle. Okay, so remorse of conscience is connected to the denying principle. And so if we suppress that denying principle, the active part that just sins continuously just goes on to infinity. Is that what he's saying? In their presences there arise more frequently the cause of the manifestation of the said being, and as the sensation thereby infallibly lead to the suppression and the enslaving of the denying principle inherent in the common presences of the three-brained beings called self-calming, then in them during every kind of inner and outer manifestation of their common presences, which flow from the natural stimuli of one or another separately independently spiritualized localizations, proper to be present in the three-centered beings, each time with the arising of this sensation of self-remorse disagreeable to them, at first intentionally on the part of their ruminating parts, and later thanks already to the habit which they had created there, began to be stifled and gradually to cease self-criticism, and so by reason of this impotency arising and always increasing in their organization, which involved by constant repetition the whole disharmony of all the functioning of their psyche, there gradually almost disappeared from their common presence as such data also infallibly inherent in every three-brained being of all our great universal manifesting sincerity even towards themselves. So it sounds like, what does he say, the independently spiritualized localizations, because we're unbalanced, because our centers are imbalanced, intellect, emotion, motor instinct, because those centers are imbalanced, if conscience of self-remorse arises, it only arises in a single center, and so the other two centers don't feel it, and so you can kind of ignore it. Like, you feel bad, and you feel bad for procrastinating, so you just procrastinate harder. A part of you is like, no, you need to do the work, and another part of you is like, just one more scroll. And it's like, the disharmony in us just stops us from at least self-criticizing properly in the moment. That's what it sounds like he's saying. As basis for the disappearance from their common presences of data for ableness to be sincere with other beings similar to themselves, there served just that abnormal form of their mutual relationship long before established there, which, as I have already told you, was based on their mutual division into different what are called castes or classes. The caste system ended. What class are you though? When truly the British and Indian civilizations were made for each other. When there began among them, and soon became inevitable, the habit of allocating one another to these various maleficent castes of theirs, then from that time, in the common presence of each one of them, there were gradually crystallized two particular, quite opposite, what are called organic properties, the manifestation of which little by little even ceased to depend on either their ordinary consciousness or on their subconsciousness. These two properties consist in this, that they always behave towards each other either, so to say, haughtily or servilely. What in tarnation? Just gonna, give us the meaning. In a way that shows you are too eager to serve and please. And just so I know for reals. So, servilely means simping, and haughtily means in an unfriendly way seeming to consider yourself better than others. So, simps versus sigma. So basically, that's the dichotomy of man here. During the manifestation of both these properties, there are paralyzed in them all relations on what are called equal terms. Okay, so as soon as you meet someone, you never do it equally. You automatically put them above you or yourself below them. Farshid Shan Barton says, fellas, I can't stay, but I just wanted to say I love you guys. We love you too, Farshid. During the manifestation of both these properties, these are paralyzed in them all relations on what are called equal terms with anybody whomsoever, thanks to which not only the inner sincere, but also even the outer ordinary habitual relations have become established among them in such a way that already it has become quite usual, particularly in recent times, that if someone belongs to a caste considered higher than the caste of another, then in everything and always in relation to this other there arise in him impulses called there either haughtiness or contempt or patronage or condescension. That one was because they cut that word in half, okay? Condescension. And so on. And if somebody considers his own caste lower than that of another, there will infallibly arise in him impulses which they call self-abasement, false humility, sycophancy, bootlicking, oh yeah, cringing, simping, and many other specific impulses, the totality of which constantly corrodes in their presences what is called awareness of one's own individuality. Never simp, guys. Never simp, fellas, not even for a little bit, which ought to be present in them also. Dylan says no homo, but I understand. That's right, everyone. Understanding is now gay. The said property, which already became inherent in their common presences, gradually led to this, that they lost the habit and automatically ceased to be able to be sincere with other beings similar to themselves, even with those belonging to their own caste. It was for this reason, my boy, that I decided, while existing among these favourites of yours this time, to choose from among the professions existing there that one which gives the possibility at times of automatically establishing among them those relations by which they can be sincere up to a certain degree, and this in order that the possibility might be open to make the investigations which were indispensable to me, and by this means to obtain materials for my elucidations. My favourite's time to choose from among them professions in among them relations by which... Okay. So Beelzebub's just kind of... So I'm just reading chat. You fellas make me laugh. That is why I then became just such a professional there as is called at the present time a physician. This profession there corresponds somewhat to that profession which those whom we call our Zerlichners. Besides this said profession, there is, by the way, there yet another profession, with the representatives of which some of your favourites automatically become more sincere, perhaps than with others, particularly concerning those as they express themselves, inner experiencings of theirs which I needed most of all for my elucidation. However, although that profession might yield more material for my investigations, I did not wish to choose this profession for myself, to which what are called confessors most often devote themselves for the sole reason that this profession constantly constrains one to play outwardly a role that never allows one to consider one's inner real impulses. Yeah. So he criticizes the priests. Yeah, you get a lot of psychological data, but you never are in a situation when you can really know yourself or know your real impulses. Before telling you further, I must, I think, enlighten you a little also about what the contemporary physicians there represent in themselves who ought to correspond to our Zerlichners. Zerlichner sounds like something. A Zerlichner sounds like some guy in the 1940s would invent, like a new car. You gotta get the new Zerlichner. Something like, it sounds like something, man. You know what I mean? You probably already know that Zerlichners among us on the planet Karatus, as also in general beings similar to them on other planets of our great universe, upon which breed already formed three-brained beings, and from the number of whom are several, who are called differently on different planets, take upon themselves essential obligations in relation to the environment of being similar to themselves. Well, these Zerlichners are those responsible individuals who voluntarily devote the whole of their existence to helping any being of that region to fulfill his being obligations. So the Zerlichners are also kind of like life coaches. If this being for some reason or other, or simply thanks to a temporary irregular functioning of his planetary body, ceases to be able to fulfill his inner or outer being duty by himself, it must without fail be noticed that in former times, also on your planet, such professionals, as are now called their physicians, were almost the same and did almost the same as our Zerlichners among us, but gradually with the flow of time, the responsible beings there who devoted themselves to such profession, namely to the fulfillment of such a high voluntary being duty taken upon themselves, degenerated like everything on that strange planet, and also became absolutely peculiar. So this is where Gurdjieff starts dunking on the field of medicine. Let's go, boys. Licking Zerks, says Serial. And at the present time, there, when the functioning of his planetary body in one or other of your contemporary favorites becomes deranged in this or that respect, and when this being ceases to be able to fulfill his being obligations, these contemporary physicians of theirs are also called in for help. And no question about it, these physicians do also indeed come, but how they help and how they discharge by their inner essence the obligations taken upon themselves, it is precisely here, as our highly esteemed Mullah Nasser ad-Din says, that the dead camel of the merchant Vermasen Zerunan Alaram is buried. That is a reference and a half. I'm not even going to look that one up. Know, first of all, that at the present time, those contemporary three-brained beings become those professionals who, for the most part, during the periods of their preparation to be responsible beings, succeed, as is said there, in learning by rote much miscellaneous information concerning those means for getting rid of every possible kind of what are called their illnesses. Means which old women in their dotage during all previous times on their planet employed upon or advised for three-brained beings there to this end. Among the number of such means for getting rid of the said illnesses, there are chiefly various remedies existing under the name medicines. Well, no, my boy. When one of the contemporary beings becomes a responsible professional, and when other beings needing his help apply to him for this help, he uses or prescribes just those mentioned remedies. Here it will be very useful for the development of your reason if to your common presence is added a logic Nestarian implantation. Okay. From information concerning one particular very peculiar property which is acquired in the psyche of these contemporary professionals of the planet Earth. This peculiar psychic property is acquired by those terrestrial professionals as soon as they receive the title of qualified physician. And it functions constantly in them during their wish to help other beings who need their aid. The point is that in their common presences, both the intensity of the desire to help and the quality itself of the help, given always depending exclusively on the smell there is in the house to which he is called, namely, if the house to which such a contemporary professional is called for help smells of what are called English pounds, okay, then it, thanks to this smell, not only does his inner being wish to help the suffering being increase to the point of what is called ne plus ultra. Gurdjieff, My Hero Academia fan, confirmed. But even in outer manifestations, his planetary body at once assumes the form of Zed-Zat-Tshun. Hey, that was actually easier than I thought. Zed-Zat-Tshun, i.e. a beaten dog. In the case of most contemporary physicians, there even appears on their faces from this smell what are called bootlicking expressions, and their bobtail becomes pressed tight, almost glued between their legs, Lamau. But if the house to which such a terrestrial Zerlicker, a Zerlickner, is called for help to a needy being smells of what are called cancelled German marks, then his inner being wish to help the person in need also increases, but only in this respect, that he may write out as quickly as possible what is called a prescription invented by the Germans, and the more quickly leave the house. So, they like rich people. What's that? You don't have health insurance? Uh-oh. Here also, I must tell you that when in this second case the contemporary terrestrial beings who have the profession of physician leave the house of the person who needed their help and walk along the street, then all their exteriors, even the muscles of their faces, invariably express something as follows. You curs, look out, otherwise I shall crush you like cockroaches. Don't you see that there here comes Not just anybody, but a genuine representative of science who has fully assimilated the knowledge given by the highest contemporary seat of learning. Yep, this is an accurate depiction of people with degrees. It will be most opportune now to tell you a little also concerning those medicinal means I mentioned, which exist there in great numbers under every kind of name, and which, on the advice of these contemporary physicians, are introduced into themselves by other ordinary beings, ostensibly as an aid in their various illnesses. Remember, he's like talking about his sixth sojourn to Earth, and he's just gone off on a tangent on like dunking on physicians. And and it is also infallibly necessary to tell you about it, for who knows? You too may suddenly have to exist at some time or another or other on that peculiar planet among these queer folk, and you would not know how to deal with these numerous medicinal means and what significance to give them. First of all, know and remember this, that the young three-brained beings there, particularly of the most recent times, who prepare themselves to take, when they arrive at the age of responsible existence, the profession of a physician, only learn by rote as many names as possible from among the many thousands of these said medicinal means now known there. So he's kind of like dunking on the whole pharmacological industry. And later, when they have already become responsible beings having this profession and receive the official title of physician, and when they are called upon to help the beings who need it, then their whole help consists in this, that they make a being effort of a certain intensity just to remember the names of several of these medical means, and to write them later on a scrap of paper called by them a prescription, with the intention of prescribing that mixture which should be introduced into the planetary body of, as they say, the invalid. The intensity, however, of their effort depends first on the social status of the being needing their help, secondly on the number of eyes fixed upon them by the being surrounding the given sick being. Well, further, this said prescription thus written by them is taken by the near relatives of the person needing the help of the contemporary Zerlichner, there to one of their contemporary what are called pharmacies, where their pharmacists prepare the required mixtures. And how, in general, such mixtures are prepared in these pharmacies are exactly what they are composed of. Well, just this you will well understand if I relate to you one of the numerous informations I learned concerning it, and which I was told by one of the beings there having just this profession of pharmacists. This, my present tale, refers to that period when I had already often begun to frequent that large community, which was called Russia. Okay, so in Russia, Russian pharmacists, let's hear about them. Let's hear about them. Well, in one of those two chief places of existence of this said large community, namely in the one, which was called Moscow, friendly relations happened to be established between myself and such a professional that is a pharmacist. According to the notions there, this pharmacist was already an old being, and his character was very kind, and even so to say, obliging. He belonged to what is called there the Jewish faith. Let's see where this goes. Let's see where this goes. It is necessary to tell you here. Are we going to go, like, off on a tangent on the Jews? Man, I'm not sure if I can do this on YouTube. That there, on almost all the continents at the present time, these pharmacists are, why, I don't know, mostly beings belonging to the Jewish faith. And so, when I used to go to that second chief place of Russia, where the acquaintance of mine, the pharmacist, existed, I would always call on him, and there in the back room of his pharmacy, which as a rule they call a laboratory, I used to chat with him about every kind of fiddle-faddle. Tyler, is this Mort from Family Guy? Let's just imagine that. Once, when I went as usual into this said laboratory of his, I saw that he was pounding something into a mortar, and as is usually done there on these occasions, I inquired what he was doing. To this he replied to me thus: "I'm pounding burnt sugar for this prescription." Nah, I can't do it voice. And here he handed me a scrap of paper on which the prescription was written of a widely spread medicinal powder, means existing there under the name of Dover's powder. So basically he's saying pharmacists just put trash in there. It's placebo. He's basically saying they're all placebos. This powder is called there Dover's because it was invented by a certain Englishman whose name was Dover. Or Dover? Dover. And it is used there chiefly for coughs. I read the prescription he gave me and I saw that sugar was no part of it, and much less burnt, whereupon I expressed to him my amazed perplexity. I think there was, in studies where they do placebo, they find one thing that's interesting. If the placebo also tastes bad, it works better. So something that tastes bad must be good for you. Whereat, with a good-natured smile, he answered me, of course, sugar has no part in this prescription, but instead it does contain a certain percentage of opium. And he further explained as follows. This Dover's powder is, I don't know why, a very popular remedy among us in Russia, and it is used by almost all the peoples of our enormous empire. Many hundreds of thousands of packets of powder are used here daily all over the country, and the opium this powder ought to contain is, as you know, no cheap thing. And if real opium were put into this powder, the opium alone would cost us pharmacists 6 or 8 kopecks a packet. And we have to sell this powder for 3 to 5 kopecks. Besides, even if all the opium from the whole of the globe were collected, the position would be the same. There would not be enough for our Russia alone. Very interesting. Jacob Mendez says, where's the new chart video, Richard? It's coming. I'm just over a third of the way through editing. So I'm kind of editing Crew at the moment, and then I'll do the Muslim Brotherhood. I'm getting there, man. I'm getting there. Marshall says, pharmacists be like, oh, you're anxious and depressed? Take these drugs and develop a dependency. This is what happens when we fall to a mechanistic or Ahrimanic way of thinking exactly. And it may not even be that. It's just like, oh, take this prescription of sugar pills for $300 each. So instead, the prescription of Dr. Dover, we pharmacists have invented another prescription consisting of such substances as are easily obtainable and which are accessible and profitable for everybody. This is why we pharmacists make this powder of soda, burnt sugar, and a small quantity of quinine. Quinine? 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 An alkaloid derived from the bark of a cinchona tree. Okay. Okay. So I'll just keep moving. Just keep moving. All of these substances are cheap. Well, quinine is. It is true, a little expensive, but then you see not much of it is required. Of the total 100% of the composition of these powders, there will only be about 2% of quinine. Here, I could not help interrupting him. You don't mean it, but it's not possible. Has no one ever discovered that instead of Dover's powder, you give them this particular mess? Of course not, laughingly replied this good acquaintance of mine. These things can be detected only by sight and taste, and this Dover's powder, which we make, however, you turn it, and under whatever microscope you examine it, is in colour the same as it should be according to the genuine prescription of this Dr. Dover. And as to taste, it is absolutely impossible, thanks chiefly to the proportion of quinine which we put into it, to distinguish it from the genuine powder made with the real opium. Stephen Evans says quinine reduces fever. Okay. But the analysis, I asked him. What analysis? He replied sarcastically, though also with a kind of smile. A thorough analysis of a single powder would cost so much that this money you could buy not only half a hundredweight of this powder, but possibly even open a whole pharmacy with it. So it is understandable that for 3 or 5 kopecks nobody is likely to be such a fool. Strictly speaking, nowhere is the analysis about which you are thinking ever done. Each town, it goes without saying, has its analytic chemists, and even every multiplicity has such specialists in its service. But what do they amount to, and what do they know, these specialists, analytic chemists? Perhaps you do not know these specialists who occupy such responsible posts, study, and what they understand. No? Then I shall tell you about this. For instance, Some mama's darling, a young man inevitably with a pimpled face, and he is pimpled because his mama considered herself a highbrow and thought it was indecent to speak of and to point out certain things to her son, whereupon this son of hers, not having formed his own consciousness, did that which was done in him, and the results of these doings of his, as with all such young people, appeared on his face as pimples, which are very well known. Even also, playing with hand solo gives you pimples. Have you read The Immortal by Borges? Is that the one? Yeah, wait, is that the one where that guy tells a story to a princess about how he went to find the city of immortals, and there's all those like troglodytes around, and then it turns out that they are the immortals, and one of them is like the writer of the Odyssey or something? That was a trippy story, man. One immortal is simply every man. It was very interesting. It was very interesting. But yeah, stop distracting me, Bernardo. Well, my honourable doctor, it was thus that the pharmacist continued. Before, however, continuing, my boy, to tell you further what the kind pharmacist said, he's a kind pharmacist, even though a fraud, I must tell you that when I became a professional physician there, your favourites everywhere called me doctor. He's the doctor! Beelzebub is Doctor Who. I will... Confirmed. I will sometime, without fail, explain to you about that title of theirs, because owing to that hateful word doctor, a very sad, tragic misunderstanding occurred there once to our dear Ahun. Oh, that's funny. Hell yeah. Let's get it on. And now listen to what that kind pharmacist there said to me further. He said, this young man, this mania's darling, that's funny, not mama's darling, it's a maniacal woman, mania's darling, with the pimpled face, studies at a certain university to become a specialist analytical. So he's an analytical chemist. People who study at universities are wankers. But there at the university is bound to study those special books usually fabricated in Germany by learned beings there, oh boy. And really, my boy, among these contemporary Germans, especially during recent times, the invention of scientific books in all branches has also increased. Since analysis is also a branch of their science, so in this branch also a great mass of books has already been accumulated among these German scientific beings, and almost all the peoples of Europe, as well as other countries, use these scientific books. Well, that kind pharmacist said further, it is this young man who has finished his university course and consequently drawn his knowledge concerning what is called the complex of substances from the books fabricated by the German scientific beings who must make the analysis of our Dover's powder. In those German books from which he gathered his knowledge of the complex substances, it is of course also stated of which elements these and the other substances consist, and the formulas of these elements are also certain to be quoted. It is also explained in these books what appearance these substances have in which are present all the elements which should be in them, and how their external appearance changes. If these elements are not in them, several homemade means for recognizing the substances are also given in the German books, as for instance by sight, by taste, by burning, and by certain means that the ancient grandmothers of ancient times had heard tell of, and so on and so forth. After finishing the course, this young man then receives the title of analytical chemist. Sometimes it happens that before receiving a responsible post, the young man happens to get practice, consisting usually in this, that he serves for a certain time at a slaughterhouse, where he helps the local chemist, also a former mama's darling, to ascertain with the aid of a microscope in a certain way only known to themselves whether the pork contains strychnine, whatever. And I'm only in it for the fake Gurdjieff words, not the fake chemistry words. And only later, when a place is vacant somewhere, is he appointed to the official post of analytical chemist. Well, dear doctor, such an official analytic chemist receives our Dover's powder for analysis. On receiving it, he recognizes it as Dover's powder either by looking at it or by tasting it, as ordinary mortals do, or because the sender writes to him that it is precisely Dover's powder. For this analysis, he takes up from his table what they call his pharmaceutical guide, also composed by Germans, which I love how he just inserts that, also composed by Germans, which every official analytic chemist is bound to have. And there in that guide, he hunts up the place where are written the formulas of powders of all kinds as Dover's. Powder is known everywhere. It is, of course, also included in that book. Thereafter, our highly respected analytic chemist takes from his table a form on which official title is indicated and writes, "The powder sent to us for analysis proves to be, according to all data, Dover's powder. The analysis showed it to contain," and he copies a formula from his German pharmaceutical guide, deliberately increasing or diminishing some of the figures, but increasing or diminishing them, of course, only very slightly, so that they may not slap you in the eye. Those damn Germans. And he does this, first of all, so that everyone should know that he has written the results of his analysis not any old way, but that he has really investigated the matter. And secondly, whatever you may say, he has town pharmacist being also an official person will little wish. Whoa, what the hell? And secondly, because whatever you may say, he as a town pharmacist being also an official person will little wish, I think, to make enemies for himself in the town where he lives. Yeah, there we go. So basically there's just laziness and indolence and fraud just kind of expands from this onwards. The form thus written is dispatched to him who sent the Dover's powder, and the famous analytic chemist himself is quite at peace, as no one knows that he has made no analysis at all, nor could anyone check him. First, because he is the only official analytic chemist in town, and secondly, because even if one of these powders of ours should be taken to any other phenomenal chemist in another town, nothing alarming could happen. Are there no other Dover's powders in the world? The packet of powder he analyzed no longer exists because naturally, in making the analysis, he had to destroy it. Besides, no one is to be found who, for the sake of 3 kopecks worth of Dover's powder, would kick up such a fuss. At all events, venerated doctor, for 30 years now I have been making these powders according to the prescription of ours, and I certainly sell them, and up to today I have never had any misunderstanding on account of these Dover's powders of ours. And no misunderstanding can occur because Dover's powder is already generally known everywhere, and everybody is convinced that it is excellent for a cough. And all that is required of any remedy is that it should be known to be a good one. As regards how the remedy is made and what it contains, what does it matter? Personally, in my handling of these remedies for many years, a definite opinion has been formed in me that none of these remedies known to contemporary medicine can be of any use at all without faith in it. So there you go. He confirms placebo. He confirms placebo. And faith in a person concerning any remedy arises only when the given remedy is known and when many people say that it is very good for a certain illness. Safe and effective. Indeed, Tyler. It is just the same with this powder of ours. Once it is called Dover's powder, that is enough, because everybody already knows it. And many people often say of it that it is excellent for coughs. And besides speaking candidly, our new composition of Dover's powder is much better than the real one made from the prescription of Dover himself, if only because it contains no substance injurious to the organism. For instance, according to the prescription of Dr. Dover himself, opium must enter into the composition of his powder. And you know the properties of opium? If a man takes it often enough, even in small doses, his organism soon gets so accustomed to it that later he ceases dosing himself. He suffers intensely. But from the powder made from our prescription, this would never happen, since it contains none of that opium or any other substance harmful to the organism. In short, my esteemed doctor, every one ought, when walking in the streets to shout from the bottom of his heart, "Long live the new prescription for Dover's powder." He was going to say something more, but just then a boy brought him from the pharmacy itself a whole stock of various prescriptions. Upon seeing him, he rose and said to me, "Excuse me, doctor, I am compelled to stop our friendly chat and to get busy on the preparation of these innumerable orders." Wow. By bad luck, both my assistants are absent today. One of them, because his esteemed other half must bring into God's world today one more mouth to feed, and the other has to attend the courts because a chauffeur is being accused of kidnapping his daughter. Lamau. Well, enough of that. If you should really have to exist among these favourites of yours, you will at least know from this last talk of mine that although the physicians were there write a dozen wiseacring names in their prescriptions, yet in these official establishments of theirs, which are called pharmacies, their remedies are prepared almost always after the fashion of that Dover's powder. It even happens there that occasionally these kind of pharmacists prepare early in the morning a whole barrel of some liquid and a whole box of some powder. And during the entire day they satisfy everyone bringing prescriptions, either by pouring from that common barrel or by taking powder from that common box. In order that this mixture, prepared betimes, should not always have the same appearance, these kind of professionals put it in something for colouring with various colours for changing the taste and smell. In spite of all that I have said, however, I advise you very strongly to be extremely careful with one kind of their remedies, because it does sometimes happen that these kind of pharmacists put into these mixtures something poisonous for the planetary body, of course, by mistake. So Goethe does not have a very high regard for modern medicine. Moreover, for the beings with normal reason, the custom has been established there, of course, accidentally, always to depict on the labels of mixtures of that kind what is called a skull and crossbone, so that it may be possible always to distinguish that kind of poisonous remedy from the ordinary medicinal means. However, in any case, do remember that from among the number of many thousands of known medical means applied by the contemporary physicians there, only 3, and even then only sometimes produced some or other real results of the planetary bodies of your contemporary ordinary three-brained beings. Ugh. One of these 3 medicinal means, which does something, nevertheless produce a useful reaction, is that substance, or more strictly speaking, those active elements entered into it, which the beings of Maraplesi learned how to obtain from the plant poppy, and which they were the first to call opium. Of course, just a mistake, nothing more, move along. Exactly, Marshall. The second substance is that which is called their castor oil. This substance was already used long ago by the beings of Egypt for embalming their mummies, and it was they who also noticed that this substance has, among other things, that action for which it is now used. But the knowledge about this castor oil passed also to the beings of Egypt from the beings of the continent Atlantis, who belonged to the learned society at Calden. And the third substance is that which has been obtained there by beings from the dawn of centuries, from what is called the Chinoa tree. So that's this tree here. I need to get me a Chinoa tree. Gimme, gimme. Now listen, my boy, to the information about the newly invented name of those terrestrial contemporary physicians, articulated as doctor. It would seem that this invention is that also of the beings of the important community of Germany there, and they invented this articulation for the purpose of defining some merit or other of some among them, but this same invention of theirs, which was widely spread on the whole of their planet, became for some reason or other the ordinary nominal name for all the contemporary physicians there. It must be even emphasized that thanks to this invention of theirs, there was added there yet one more to the number of factors, the totality of which constantly leads them into error, and by which their being-mentation already weakened without this, becoming year by year more mak hoc ichni, Makhokhichni. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce that. On account of this new word of theirs, even our Ahun, in spite of his having an incomparably more normal presence and being clothed with a being reason of higher quality, had, while we were there, a very disagreeable and almost idiotic misunderstanding. Wow. Martial esotericist Atlantis, did Gurdjieff know the Theosophers? Yeah, in some of the earlier live streams, we went through the Atlantis part of the Beelzebub's Tales. There's this, like, I think Ouspensky asks Gurdjieff if he, like, read The Secret Doctrine at one point, and he said, Gurdjieff's response was something like, "Ah, yes, it took me many years to unlearn what that woman taught me." So he definitely knew, but I don't think he had them in that higher regards. He held them in high regards at all. But he uses their ideas, or uses some of the ideas at least. Remember, even the Theosophists. Well, actually, let's separate the Theosophists from, and I mean modern Theosophists, from Blavatsky. In Blavatsky's work, a lot of people criticize her of just kind of orientalizing and taking stuff from the East, or misapplying stuff from the East and misrepresenting it. But she also did a lot of digging into the Western traditions, and her system or doctrine has a lot of Neoplatonism, has a lot of Kabbalah, has a lot of Jacob Boehm is reflected in it, Paracelsus, Eliphas Levi. She has a lot of respect for the Western tradition. Like, her whole aim was to try and synthesize all religion with science. And so, you know, it's an ambitious thing, an ambitious book. I'm thinking of, after finishing Beelzebub, I'm thinking of doing Secret Doctrine on live stream. But yeah, so, you know, even Blavatsky, I would say her greatest critic, René Guénon, even René Guénon said of Blavatsky, she was a true genius. And of course, he continues and says, and it is a shame that her successors do not share this trait. But, you know, I kind of think we should separate Blavatsky from what came after. Like, Blavatskyism from Theosophism. The later Theosophists. But, yeah. Yeah, Gurdjieff definitely read it. Or he knew about it, at least. So now let's see the funny thing that happened to Ahun. As for the rest, it will, in my opinion, be much better if he tells you about it himself. Having said this, Beelzebub addressed Ahun in the following words. Tell us, old man, how this then happened, and what made you for several days the whole time skuhiachini and tsirikuakti. Ooh. No, I don't think I got that one. Why, Gurdjieff? Why? Tsirikuaksi? No, it's the tse at the end of the word that's messing me. And it's a k. Kuts. Tsirikuat. And it's a ku. Acts. Tsirikuacts. I think that's it. Tsirikuacts and tsukiachni. That almost sounds like Greek or something. Or as the three-brained beings of the planet Earth would say, made you just grumble and be irritable. Oh, come on, man. Just like your friend there, Dame Bess. Hold on. Who's Dame Bess? Was an English courtier? No way. Okay, whatever. But is this a reference? So Ahun literally knew Elizabeth Relay, Elizabeth I of England. That's so who was Ahun in this fictional depiction? And basically he's saying she was also grumbly and irritable all the time. That's hilarious as a reference. To this, Ahun again imitating the style of Beelzebub. And this time, even his very intonation began to relate as follows. This misunderstanding happened to me owing to the following case. During this 6th visit of ours to the planet Earth, just towards the very end, we had to exist, by the way, for a little while, also in the capital of those same German beings who, as his reverence condescended to say, invented just this word, accused for me, doctor. So what, they called him a doctor. When did she live? And where did she live? So she was English. She's living in England, right? Known as Bess. Sir Nicholas Throckmorton. God, English names. Yeah, let me just... Hilarious. In the hotel, where we had the place of our existence, next to my room, or as is said there, in the number next to mine, there existed a very sympathetic pair of beings who had only recently completed the sacrament of the union of the active with the passive for the purpose of serving the great all-universal trogo-auto-egocratic process. So basically he was in a hotel and the couple next door were banging. For the prolongation of their generation, or as they themselves say, would have been married, and they were still considered newlywed. Well, with this young couple I accidentally became acquainted in the house of some friends of mine, after which this couple often began to invite me to their room for what is called a cup of tea. At other times I even myself, without their invitation, used to drop in on them in order to shorten the wearisome German evenings. Hilarious. He's basically saying Germans are boring, uptight, intellectual, stuffy. She was, as is said there, and in an interesting condition, and according also to their expression, was expecting her firstborn. They, as well as I, oh no, I can see where this is going, as well as I, were in the capital for an indefinite period, and on the business for the profession of the active. So this is like, you know those this is like this comical TV show. This is the episode where like one of the characters gets mistaken for a doctor, and then he has to deliver a baby, and like... like they're in an elevator and it breaks down and she starts giving birth and he's like, oh god, that man there's a doctor. No, a doctor in philosophy. You're a doctor, do something. Oh my god, this is hilarious. Sorry, and the business or the profession of the active half of this young couple, they were therefore existing in that hotel in which we were just staying. Oh, what the hell? What is this? Is there a little break? Something missing here. There once resounded from them a very nervous rapping on the wall of my room. I instantly ran to them, and it turned out there that himself was not at home, for on that very day he had had to go off somewhere, and during this time she had felt faint, and almost without consciousness had instinctively rapped on my wall. When I entered, she already felt somewhat better, but imploringly asked me to hurry for a doctor. I instantly, of course, rushed into the street, but once there I thought, but where am I to go now? Suddenly I remembered that not far from the hotel a being lived whom everybody called Doctor. It was even marked on a metal plate in front of his name on the door, and that he was a doctor, and it was this doctor that I ran. But it turned out that he was dining, and therefore his servant asked me to wait a little in the drawing room, having explained to me that the doctor would have finished his dinner and immediately, with his guests, would soon be coming out. Nothing missing my copy, says Tyler. Yeah, I don't know, that must just be a glitch up there. I, of course, sat down in the drawing room awaiting this doctor, but it could scarcely be said that I sat very quietly. I was sitting there as if, as beings say there, on live coals, because I was most anxious about the condition of my neighbour. But the honourable doctor, however, never came. Almost 20 minutes past. He's definitely a doctor. I could not bear it any longer and rang the bell. When the servant entered, I asked her to remind the doctor about me and say that I was in a very great hurry and could not wait any longer for him. She went away. Another 5 minutes passed, and at last the doctor himself appeared. Hurriedly, I shortly explained to him what I wanted from him. But to my astonishment, he began to laugh irritably at my request. I thought, obviously, during dinner with his friends, this doctor has drunk more than one glass. Too much of German beer. And only when he calmed down a little from his hysterical laughter could he tell me, to his great regret, he was not a doctor of medicine, but only a doctor of philosophy. Called it. Called it. At that moment, I was experienced Called it, man. Someone donate for that. At that moment, I experienced such a state, as if, as it were, I were for the second time hearing our endlessness's sentence of exile passed upon his reverence, and those nearest him, and in consequence upon me. Well, our dear Hassien, I left the drawing room of that doctor, and was once more out in the street, in the same position as before. I bet this just keeps happening. Just then a taxi happened to pass. I got into it and began to reflect, where now? I then remembered that in the cafe, where I sometimes went, a being also, almost always went, whom everybody called Doctor. I ordered the chauffeur to hurry to this cafe. There a waiter known to me told me that this same doctor was indeed there, but had just left with some of his acquaintances, and he, the waiter, had accidentally overheard from their conversation that they were going to such and such a restaurant, and gave me the name of this restaurant. Although, hey, thank you, Tyler. Nice call on Doc of Philosophy. Tyler coming in clutch. Although this restaurant was some way away, yet nevertheless I ordered... Oh, damn. Oh, thank you, Marshall, as well. Woo. My boys. My boys. He did beat you to it, Marshall. Although this restaurant was some way away, yet nevertheless I ordered the chauffeur to go there, as I knew of no other doctor. At length, in half an hour, we came to this restaurant, and there I very soon found this doctor. Tiger says, I love your videos, although I don't really understand any of them, lol. You will, Tiger. Just eventually, just keep powering through. I'll understand them too one day. Although this restaurant was some way away, yet nevertheless at length, in half an hour, we came to this restaurant, and there I very soon found this doctor. Once again, this time, he turned out to be a physician, but a doctor of... Not a physician, but a doctor of jurisprudence, so he was a lawyer. I was completely, as it is said there, in the soup. At last, a fool persists in his folly, yes, Tyler. As it entered my head that I might address myself to the head waiter of the restaurant and explain to him in detail what I required. This head waiter turned out to be a very kind being. He not only explained to me what had to be done, but even went with me to a certain physician, this time called a doctor. I'm here to read Gurdjieff language, not French. We found him by chance at home, and he was kind enough to agree to go with me at once. But while we were on our way, my poor neighbour had already brought forth a boy, her firstborn, and having somehow swaddled the baby without anyone's help, was already sound asleep after terrible torments she had borne in solitude. Oh, at least she was okay. And so from that day, I have with my whole being hated the sound of the word doctor, and to each of the beings of the planet Earth, I would advise him to use this word only when he is very angry. So for Ahun, the alien Ahun, he uses the doctor as a swear word. That's pretty funny. That you may the better understand the significance of the contemporary physicians on your planet, it is also necessary to tell you of the saying of our highly esteemed Mullah Nasser ad-Din concerning these same contemporary physicians. He speaks of them thus: For our sins, God has sent us two kinds of physicians, one kind to help us, and the other to prevent us living. One kind to help us die, and the other to prevent us living. There you go. I liked what I said. And Ornakre. Oh, so no, here's the footnote. They put it at the end of the chapter in the PDF, Lamau. For our sins, God has sent us two kinds of physicians. One kind to help us die, and the other to prevent us from living. That was cool. That was an interesting chapter. Very interesting chapter. Ahun's terrible trials in finding a doctor. Hilarious. Well, thank you all for surviving that round. We almost 2 hours in. That took 2 hours. That was a long chapter. But yeah, we made it. We made it, boys. We made it. And girls, I guess, maybe. But anyway, I'll see y'all. So next week, I'm going to be on vacation, I guess. I'll try and do just like a kind of a vloggy live stream, just to kind of keep things going. Not as serious. Obviously, I can't do a Beelzebubs while I'm not at my home station. But yeah, maybe I'll like post a Q&A, post an Ask Me Anything, and just we'll just have a girls in the chat question mark. Yeah. We'll yeah, we'll just have a little hang. Have a little hang next Sunday, just to keep the energy connected, and then the one after that will be down. Oh my God, Sean dropping $20. Thank you, Mr. Beardre. A great, yeah, I'm gonna see some family. Second account says I would love a vlog. Yeah, well, I don't know if I'm gonna vlog, but you know what I mean. Just do a little hang, and we'll just talk the crap. I won't have my hat with me. I don't know how my family would feel. Anyway, I'll let y'all boys go now, and I'll see y'all on the flippity flop. Thank you for watching. See you later.